Caleb lived in a world of textures, not textbooks. His classroom was the dense, humid forest that bordered his small, isolated community in the heart of rural Louisiana. He learned the language of roots and leaves, of the buzzing of cicadas, and the slow, deliberate crawl of the bayou. While other children recited multiplication tables, Caleb was mapping the migration patterns of monarch butterflies by memory, his mind a vast, intricate network of ecological data. He knew which leaves could staunch a bleeding wound and which berries were a lie dressed in a tempting shade of red. Formal schooling was a luxury his family could not afford, but Caleb's mind, untamed by curriculum, had grown into a wild and magnificent thing, capable of connections no one else could see. One sweltering afternoon, he was helping his grandmother, Mama Rose, harvest wild chicory root when a sleek, black sedan, utterly out of place, rumbled down their dusty road. A man emerged, his suit a stark, dark line against the vibrant green of the landscape. He was Dr. Julian Albright, a world-renowned geneticist, and he was desperate. Dr. Albright was the head of a team at the prestigious St. Jude's Children's Hospital in New Orleans, working on the case of a young girl named Lily Montgomery. Lily was the daughter of a tech billionaire, and for months she had been deteriorating. She suffered from an array of bizarre and seemingly unrelated symptoms: debilitating fatigue, a strange crystalline rash that appeared on her skin, and an intermittent loss of motor control. She was dying, and the best medical minds in the world had no answers. They had sequenced her genome, run every conceivable test, and found nothing. Her father, in his desperation, had announced a reward of $10 million to anyone who could solve the puzzle. Dr. Albright had heard a strange, persistent whisper from an old acquaintance in the local medical community. The rumor was of a young boy in the bayou who had an almost preternatural ability to identify and solve medical anomalies using only his senses and knowledge of the natural world. Skeptical, but without options, Albright had come. Caleb, initially shy, was drawn in by the good doctor's quiet desperation. He didn't understand genetic sequencing or metabolic disorders, but he understood sickness. He saw it in the blight on a plant or the sluggishness of a normally swift creature. He agreed to go to New Orleans, to the alien world of the hospital. The moment Caleb stepped into the sterile, antiseptic environment of Lily's room, his senses were overwhelmed. The air was dry and smelled of chemicals, not the rich earthiness of home. The silence was thick, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of machines. He stood at the foot of her bed, not looking at the glowing monitors, but at Lily herself. She was frail, her skin pale, and the rash was a constellation of tiny glassy diamonds on her arms. Dr. Albright had explained all the symptoms, all the failed tests. The team had concluded it was a novel genetic mutation, one they couldn't identify. Caleb, however, ignored their conclusions. His eyes, trained by a lifetime of observing the minutiae of the forest floor, took in the details the doctors had overlooked. He noticed the faint, almost imperceptible tremor in her right hand, a subtle shift in the color of her eyelids, a minute discoloration on her lips. But most importantly, he saw the rash. The doctor had dismissed it as a simple symptom, but Caleb saw something else. It didn't look like an organic reaction. It looked structured. It reminded him of the way frost formed on a leaf in the cold morning air, or the precise geometry of a salt crystal. Over the next few days, Caleb became an unwelcome but tolerated shadow in the hospital. He didn't ask for lab results or medical charts. Instead, he asked about Lily's life. He talked to her parents, her nurses, even her personal chef. He learned about her favorite foods, the places she visited, the things she touched. The doctors, baffled, humored him. "What's the point?" one asked Dr. Albright. "He's asking if she likes chocolate or vanilla." "I have no idea," Albright sighed. "But we've exhausted every scientific avenue. Maybe a fresh perspective is what we need." Caleb learned that a few months ago, Lily's family had moved from their city penthouse to a sprawling new estate in the countryside, a place with a large manicured garden. He asked for photos of the garden. He pored over them, not seeing flowers and fountains, but a precise botanical inventory. He pointed to a small, unassuming bush with dark green leaves. "This one," he said, his voice quiet. "Is it near the house?" Her mother confirmed it was. It was a new, ornamental plant they had just had installed. The next thing he asked for was the brand of water they drank at the new house and the cleaning products used on the estate. The family used an imported, purified water brand and a high-end, eco-friendly cleaning service. Caleb's line of questioning seemed utterly illogical to the medical team, a collection of disconnected details with no bearing on genetics or disease. The rash, however, gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was not a biological reaction, but a chemical one, a deposit. He asked if he could take a sample of the rash. Dr. Albright, still humoring him, arranged for a single, tiny flake to be carefully removed. He offered to have it analyzed in the lab. "No," Caleb said, shaking his head. "I can tell you what it is." He took the flake and, with a precision that stunned Dr. Albright, crushed it between two slides, the way he would crush a plant specimen to see its fibers. He held it up to the light, his gaze intense. "It's crystalline," he murmured. "But it's not organic." His mind, which had spent years observing the minute differences between things, began to work. He recalled the look of that rash and the look of the leaves on the bush in the photograph. Then, a memory surfaced from his childhood. His grandfather, a veteran of the Vietnam War, showing him a rare plant that was used to make certain explosives. The plant was a relative of the common oleander, but with a different chemical signature. He began to piece together a theory so outlandish it was almost laughable. The ornamental bush was a rare species, a hybrid of a common plant and a highly poisonous one, cultivated for its aesthetics. It was in itself harmless, but the purified water Lily drank was devoid of certain minerals, like iron and magnesium, and the eco-friendly cleaning product her family used contained a mild organic acid. Caleb explained his theory to a circle of stunned doctors. The trace amounts of a specific chemical from the ornamental bush, a type of cyanide compound, were being absorbed through Lily's skin or inhaled from the air. In a normal person, with a balanced diet and mineral-rich water, the body would have a natural defense against the toxin. But Lily's body, thanks to her pristine, over-purified environment, had no such defense. The mineral-deficient water created an internal imbalance, and the organic acid in the cleaning products reacted with the tiny traces of the poison, causing the compound to crystallize on her skin, the very rash the doctors had dismissed. A silence fell over the room. The doctors, brilliant and specialized, had been looking for a complex genetic code-based solution. They had been looking at the inner workings of the human body, when the problem lay in the elegant simplicity of cause and effect. An environmental poison, a diet-induced weakness, and a common chemical catalyst. Dr. Albright, a man of science, was the first to speak. "It's impossible. It's too simple." But he ordered the tests. The results came back confirming Caleb's hypothesis. The traces of the poison were there. and the chemical reaction was reproducible in the lab. The doctors, who had spent months and millions of dollars on high-tech solutions, were humbled. The puzzle was solved, not by a machine, but by a boy who knew the silent languages of the earth. The solution was simple: remove the ornamental bush and change Lily's diet and water. Within weeks, the rash faded, the fatigue lifted, and Lily began to thrive. The news of the medical prodigy from the bayou spread like wildfire. The Montgomery family, overjoyed, fulfilled their promise and gave Caleb the $10 million reward. He used the money not to buy extravagant things, but to build a community center back home with a small clinic and, most importantly, a school. A school where children would learn to read and write, but where they would also be taught by Mama Rose and Caleb himself in the grand classroom of the bayou, the true source of all his knowledge. Dr. Albright, now a close friend and mentor, came to visit Caleb's new school. He watched as Caleb, with the $10 million check safely in the bank, explained the delicate balance of a thriving ecosystem to a group of wide-eyed children. He understood then that the world had not only found a medical genius in Caleb, but a different kind of scientist, one who saw not just the problem, but the complete, interconnected system, a skill that no classroom could ever teach. The Montgomery family, in their gratitude, went even further. They established a foundation in Caleb's name, dedicated to supporting unconventional approaches to problem solving. They provided scholarships for young people from underprivileged backgrounds who demonstrated exceptional, non-traditional talents. Caleb, still only a teenager, was asked to sit on the board. He attended his first meetings in a borrowed suit, feeling like a misplaced bayou creature. But his perspective was invaluable. While the other board members discussed grant applications based on academic credentials and research proposals, Caleb asked questions about the applicants' hobbies and their environments. Does she like to garden? He'd ask. Does he spend a lot of time by the river? The traditionalists were baffled, but Caleb's instincts were proven right time and again. He could see beyond the surface to the kind of mind that truly saw the world as a system of interconnected parts. One such case involved a young woman named Maya, a brilliant coder who, despite being entirely self-taught, had built a complex app to track the spread of invasive species in her region. She had no degree in biology or computer science, but Caleb championed her application. He understood that her mind, like his, was one that had built its own logic, its own set of connections. The foundation funded her work, and within 2 years, her app was adopted by a national environmental agency, saving millions of dollars in eradication efforts. The world's perception of Caleb shifted. He was no longer just the bayou boy who solved a medical mystery. He was now an innovator, a consultant, a force for change. Medical journals wanted to interview him. Universities wanted him to lecture. He politely declined the invitations to lecture, explaining that he couldn't stand the sight of all those books in one place, but he would speak to them on his own terms. He held his first official address on a patch of sun-dappled grass behind the new community center, using a stick to draw diagrams in the dirt. He spoke of how a simple weed could hold the cure for a complex ailment, and how the answers to the world's biggest problems were not always hidden in the complex data sets of a lab, but were often visible in the beautiful simplicity of the natural world. His life, however, was not all about fame and fortune. He was still Caleb from the bayou. He still woke with the sun and went fishing with his friends. He still helped Mama Rose in the garden, and he still walked the forest paths, his bare feet memorizing the feel of the earth The money had changed his circumstances, but not the core of who he was. A year after Lily's recovery, a new, equally baffling case came to Dr. Albright's attention. A senior executive at a major pharmaceutical company was suffering from a rapidly progressing neurological disorder. He was a pillar of the community, a man who had everything, and now he was fading away. The doctors at the best hospitals in the world were again at a loss. The symptoms: a progressive loss of memory, a sudden onset of visual hallucinations, and a peculiar metallic taste in his mouth, did not fit any known diagnosis. Dr. Albright didn't hesitate this time. He called Caleb directly. Caleb, now a young man of 17, agreed to help. He flew to the pharmaceutical magnate's lavish estate, an elegant, sterile monument to human achievement. Once again, Caleb ignored the lab results and the complex medical jargon. He simply listened to the executive's story. He learned about his life, his routine, his passions. The executive, it turned out, was a connoisseur of fine whiskey. He had a private collection of rare and antique bottles, some of which were over 100 years old. Caleb asked to see the collection. He stood in the cool, climate-controlled cellar, not looking at the labels and vintages, but at the dust on the bottles, the way the light glinted on the glass, and the specific shape of the stoppers. His mind, accustomed to seeing patterns in the chaos of nature, began to work. He noticed something strange. The stoppers on the very old bottles, unlike the modern ones, were made of a different material. They were lined with a thin, almost invisible film. He asked the executive's assistant about it. The assistant explained that it was a special, biodegradable material used in the early 20th century to ensure a perfect, airtight seal. Caleb's mind made the leap. The film was made of a compound containing an infinitesimal amount of a rare, heavy metal, a residue of the antique bottling process. In the years since, this residue had slowly been absorbed into the whiskey. The executive, by drinking a bottle from his collection every night, was ingesting minute amounts of the poison, amounts so small they were undetectable in a normal blood test, but which had built up in his body over time, poisoning his brain. The metallic taste he experienced was the most obvious, and to the right kind of mind, the most telling symptom. The doctors, when Caleb presented his theory, were incredulous. It was too absurd, too simple. They insisted that the blood tests would have caught a heavy metal poisoning. Caleb calmly explained that the concentration of the metal was so low that it only became apparent in the body over time, building up gradually in the brain tissue. It was a cumulative effect, not a sudden one. Dr. Albright, who had learned to trust Caleb's instincts, ordered a special, more sensitive test. The results confirmed it. The executive's neurological disorder was not a mystery. It was the result of a slow, beautiful poison from his most cherished hobby. The solution was simple: stop drinking the whiskey. Within months, the executive's symptoms reversed, and he made a full recovery. Caleb's reputation was cemented. He became a living testament to the power of observation and the value of a mind untainted by dogma. The medical community began to change its approach. They started to incorporate a more holistic view of health, looking beyond the confines of the body and into the intricate network of a patient's life, diet, and environment. Caleb, now a renowned figure, used his influence not to amass more wealth, but to spread a simple message that true wisdom lies not in the complexity of our knowledge, but in the clarity of our sight. He returned home to the bayou, to the quiet life that had made him who he was. He was a doctor of a different kind, one who healed with the wisdom of the earth, a boy who, without a single day of formal schooling, had solved puzzles that baffled the most educated minds in the world. He was living proof that the most valuable, Education is not found in a classroom, but in the world around us, if we only take the time to truly see it.